My family found out I was lying about my life at my father's birthday dinner. At least, that was what my mother called it. She stood at the head of the table, one hand on the back of my brother's chair, the other gripping a glass of wine so tightly her knuckles have gone pale. "You let us believe you were struggling," she said, loud enough for every cousin, aunt, uncle, and family friend to hear. "You let your own parents worry about you." That was the part that almost made me laugh. Worry. My family had not worried about me in years. They had judged me, pitied me, discussed me when they thought I could not hear, used me as a warning story at holiday dinners. But worry? No. Across the table, my older brother, Nathan, leaned back in his chair with that familiar half-smile on his face. The one he wore whenever he thought I was finally about to be put in my place. Beside him sat his wife, Melissa, already holding her phone under the table. I knew she was texting someone.
Probably her sister.
Probably something like, "You won't believe what Claire did now." My father didn't say anything. He just stared at the manila envelope lying in the middle of the table. The envelope I had not brought. The envelope that had changed the entire room in less than 30 seconds. My mother looked at me like I had committed a crime. "You own that building?" she asked. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. And for the first time in my life, every person in that room was looking at me not with disappointment, but with fear. I looked down at the envelope, then back at my brother. Because he knew. Not everything, but enough. And judging by the way his face had gone grey, he had finally understood the worst part. They had spent years thinking they knew my life. They were wrong about everything. 3 days before that dinner, my mother called me at 7:12 in the morning. I remember the time because I had slept only 2 hours. My company had just closed a brutal contract negotiation with a regional hospital network, and I had been awake past 4 a.m. reviewing the final documents with my attorney. So when my phone buzzed on the nightstand, I almost ignored it. Then I saw her name. Mum. I let it ring 4 times. That was not dramatic. That was survival. With my mother, every call required emotional preparation. When I answered, she didn't say hello. "Your father's birthday dinner is Saturday at 6, she said. "Good morning to you too." "Don't be difficult, Claire." I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes. "I'm not being difficult. I'm just awake before my soul is." Silence. My jokes never landed with her. "Everyone will be there," she continued. "Your Aunt Karen, Uncle Paul, the Hendersons, Nathan and Melissa, obviously. We're doing it at the house." "Okay." "And please dress appropriately." There it was, the first cut. Small enough to deny, sharp enough to feel. I glanced at the chair in the corner of my bedroom, where a black blazer hung over a silk blouse I had worn to a board meeting 2 days earlier. Appropriately? You know what I mean. I did. She meant, don't look poor. She meant, don't embarrass us. She meant, don't show up in the quiet, simple clothes that made it easier for them to believe the version of me they preferred. My family thought I was barely getting by. They thought I worked remote customer service for a logistics company. They thought I rented a small apartment because I had no other option. They thought I drove an old grey Honda because I couldn't afford anything better. They thought I had never recovered after quitting my real job 6 years ago. They thought a lot of things. I had stopped correcting them a long time ago. "I'll dress appropriately," I said, "and don't bring up money." I blinked. "I wasn't planning to." "You know how your brother feels." I almost smiled. Nathan had recently been promoted to Vice President of Operations at Langford Group, a mid-sized real estate development company. My parents had talked about nothing else for 6 weeks. Nathan's new office, Nathan's new parking spot, Nathan's new salary, Nathan's new importance. Meanwhile, I had spent those same 6 weeks quietly finalising the acquisition of 3 commercial properties through a holding company nobody in my family knew I owned. One of those properties had a tenant, Langford Group. But I didn't know that detail would matter yet. Not really. "Why would money upset Nathan?" I asked. My mother sighed, that heavy theatrical sigh she used when she wanted me to feel childish. "He has worked very hard to get where he is." "I'm sure he has. And sometimes you make little comments." I stared at the wall. "What comments?" "You know, sarcastic ones." Translation: when Nathan brags, don't make him feel small by existing. "I'll be polite," I said. "That's all we ask." It was never all they asked. After the call ended, I sat in bed for a moment, phone still in my hand. The apartment around me was quiet. Not small, not fancy in the way people post online, just quiet. A corner unit on the 20th floor, with morning light cutting across oak floors and the city slowly waking below the windows. My family had never seen it. They had never asked. For 6 years they had believed I lived in a cramped 1-bedroom above a laundromat, because I had lived there once, for 7 months, during the worst year of my life. That was the year I stopped explaining myself. That was the year Nathan told everyone I had fallen apart. That was the year my mother began lowering her voice whenever people asked how I was doing. And that was the year I learned something important. People who need you to be a failure will ignore evidence that you are not. Saturday came with rain. Not a dramatic storm, just a cold, steady rain that blurred the streetlights and made every road shine black. I drove my Honda to my parents' house because I knew they expected it. It was clean, reliable, paid off, and yes, old. I parked 2 houses down, under the maple tree where I used to hide after arguments when I was a teenager. The house looked exactly the same. White brick, black shutters, warm kitchen window, perfect lawn. A house built to impress neighbours and suffocate daughters. I sat in the car for 30 seconds before going in. Not because I was nervous, because I was deciding who I wanted to be that night. There were 2 versions of me. The woman my family thought they knew, quiet, tired, underachieving, slightly embarrassing, and the woman who had spent 6 years building something they would never have had the patience to understand. Most people imagine revenge as loud, a slammed door, a public speech, a dramatic reveal. But real power is quieter than that. Sometimes it is walking into a room knowing nobody there has any idea what you own. When I opened the front door, the smell hit me first. Roast beef, garlic, expensive candles, Then voices, laughter, Nathan's voice above everyone else. "So I told them," he was saying, "if you want someone who can handle pressure, you don't hire a consultant. You hire me." Everyone laughed. Of course they did. I hung my coat in the hallway. My mother appeared almost instantly, wearing pearls and the smile she used for guests. Then she looked me up and down. I had worn a dark green dress, simple, elegant, not flashy. Her eyes paused on my shoes. "Those are nice," she said, like she suspected them of being fake. "Thanks. Are they new?" "No." A lie. They were Italian. She leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Just try to have a good attitude tonight. I haven't even taken off my coat." "That tone, Claire." There it was again. I smiled, not warmly, just enough to get past her. In the dining room, Nathan was standing by the fireplace with a glass of whiskey, wearing a navy suit and a watch so large it looked like it needed its own chair. "Claire," he said, spreading his arms. "You made it." "I was invited." "Were you?" Melissa laughed. Not because it was funny, because she had trained herself to laugh at Nathan's cruelty before anyone else could notice it was cruelty. My father came over and kissed my cheek. "Good to see you, kiddo." He meant it. That was the complicated part. My father was not cruel like my mother. He was worse in a quieter way. He allowed cruelty to happen and called it peace. "How's work?" he asked. Before I could answer, Nathan stepped in. "Still doing phone stuff, right?" "Something like that." He nodded with exaggerated seriousness. "Remote work is great, flexible, low pressure." I looked at him. "Depends on the work." "Sure," he said. "I just mean not everyone wants the corporate grind. Some people are happier with less responsibility." My cousin Rachel looked down at her plate. She had always been kind, but kindness in my family usually came in the form of silence. Melissa touched Nathan's arm. "Babe, don't." But she was smiling. My mother called everyone to dinner before I could decide whether to respond. I sat near the far end of the table, between Aunt Karen and my father's old friend, Mr. Henderson, who had once told me that women became too intense when they worked in finance. Nathan sat beside my father, not because it was assigned, because that was his place. Golden child, first son, successful one. The proof that my parents had done something right. Dinner began with normal conversation. Weather, renovations, a neighbour's divorce. Then, as always, the conversation found Nathan. His promotion, his responsibilities, his team, his future. My mother glowed while he spoke. Actually glowed. "I always knew he had leadership in him," she said. Nathan leaned back, accepting the praise like interest owed. My father raised his glass. "To Nathan," he said. "We're proud of you." Everyone lifted their glasses. I lifted mine too. I was not petty enough to refuse. But I was tired enough to feel nothing. Nathan smiled at me over the rim of his glass. "How about you, Claire?" he asked. "Any big promotions in the world of customer support?" The table shifted. Just slightly. That tiny movement people make when they know something rude has happened, but want to see if anyone will name it. I set my glass down. "No promotions lately." "See?" Nathan said, turning to the table. "That's what I envy about her. No stress, no politics, no board meetings. Just clock in, clock out. Board meetings. That almost got me, because 3 days earlier I had sat at the end of a conference table while 12 people waited for my decision on a $48 million asset purchase. But I just nodded. That does sound peaceful. My mother gave me a warning look. Nathan's smile widened. He thought he had won. That was always his mistake. He confused silence with defeat. The first real crack in the night happened during dessert. My mother brought out the cake, chocolate with raspberry filling, because Nathan liked it. It was my father's birthday, but Nathan liked it. Everyone sang, my father blew out the candles, then he opened gifts. Aunt Karen gave him a leather wallet. Rachel gave him framed photos of her kids. Nathan and Melissa gave him golf clubs, very expensive ones. My father looked genuinely touched. "These are too much," he said. Nathan shrugged. "Don't worry about it. Things are going well." My mother practically shone. Then she looked at me. It was subtle, but I saw it. Everyone saw it. The question before the gift. What did Claire bring? I handed my father a small wrapped box. Inside was a restored fountain pen. His father's pen. The one my grandfather had used for 30 years before it disappeared after the estate sale. I had spent 2 years tracking it down through a collector in Vermont. My father opened the box and went still. For 1 second, the room changed. He touched the pen like it might vanish. "Where did you find this?" he whispered. "Vermont." His eyes grew wet. Not dramatically, just enough. This was my dad's. I know. Nobody spoke. For the first time that night, the attention was not on Nathan. And Nathan did not like that. "It's a pen," he said lightly. My father didn't look up. "It's not just a pen." My mother stepped in quickly. "That was thoughtful, Claire." Thoughtful. Not generous, not meaningful. Thoughtful. Nathan picked up his whiskey. Must have cost a fortune on a support salary. And there it was, the second crack. My father looked at him. "Nathan?" "What? I'm joking!" But he wasn't. Everyone knew he wasn't. I could have let it pass. I had let worse pass, but something about my father's hand trembling over that pen made me tired of being small in rooms where I had earned the right to stand tall. So I looked at Nathan and said, "Not everything valuable is expensive." He smirked, spoken like someone who can't afford expensive things. The room went quiet. My mother inhaled sharply. Not because Nathan was cruel, because I might respond. And that was always the real danger in our family. Not the wound, the reaction. I folded my hands in my lap. "You'd be surprised what I can afford." Nathan laughed. Actually laughed. "Would I?" "Yes." Something in my voice made him pause, just for a moment. Then the doorbell rang. My mother frowned. "We're not expecting anyone." The sound of rain filled the silence as my father stood. "I'll get it." He left the room. Conversation tried to restart and failed. 30 seconds later, he returned with a man I recognized immediately. Elliot Marsh, my attorney. My family did not know that.
To them, he was just a tall man in a charcoal coat, holding a sealed manila envelope.
"Sorry to interrupt," Elliot said politely. "I was told Mr. Daniel Whittaker would be here." My father looked confused. "That's me." Elliot handed him the envelope. "This was delivered to our office by mistake, with instructions requiring same-day confirmation. Since we couldn't reach Ms. Claire Whittaker, I thought it best to bring it directly." Every head turned toward me. My stomach tightened. Not from fear, from calculation. Elliot did not make mistakes like this. If he was here, something had happened. Something urgent. My mother looked between us. "Claire, what is this?" "I don't know yet." Nathan snorted. "You have a lawyer now." Elliot glanced at him once. Just once. It was enough to make Nathan shut up. My father opened the envelope carefully. Inside were several documents clipped together. He read the first page, then the second. His face changed, not confusion, recognition, then shock. "Dad?" I asked.
He looked at me, then down at the paper, then back at me again. "Claire?" My mother stood. "What is it?" My father did not answer. Nathan reached across the table. "Let me see." My father pulled the document away. That alone made everyone freeze. My father had never pulled anything away from Nathan. Never. "Daniel," my mother said, voice sharper now. "What is in that envelope?" My father swallowed. "It's a notice." "What kind of notice?" He looked at me again. "A tenant lease review. For Langford Group." Nathan's smile disappeared. Melissa stopped texting. My mother frowned. "What does that have to do with Claire?" My father read the page again, slower this time. Then he said the words that changed the temperature of the room. "The building Langford leases downtown is owned by a holding company." Nathan stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. "That's confidential." Elliot calmly removed his gloves. "Not to the property owner." My mother looked at me. The room narrowed. The rain tapped against the windows. My father's voice dropped. "The holding company is registered under Claire's name." Nobody spoke. Not for a full 5 seconds. Then my mother said, "That's impossible." Not surprising, not unexpected. Impossible. Because in her mind, I was still the daughter who needed advice, the daughter who made bad choices, the daughter who couldn't possibly own anything important. Nathan grabbed the paper from my father's hand. He read it, once, then again. His lips parted slightly. That was when I knew. This was bigger than a lease review. Nathan knew something about that building. Something he did not want connected to me. My mother turned toward me slowly. "You own that building." And that brought us back to the moment where this story began. Everyone staring. My father holding my grandfather's pen like a lifeline. Nathan standing at the table, document in hand, face drained of colour. And me, sitting there with the same calm expression I had practiced for 6 years. "I own the building through Whittaker Lane Holdings," I said. My Aunt Karen whispered, Whitaker? My mother's eyes narrowed. You used our family name. I almost laughed. It's my name too. Nathan slammed the document onto the table. You don't own anything. This is some kind of paperwork mistake. Elliot looked at him. It is not. And who are you? Her attorney. That landed harder than it should have, because poor, struggling daughters do not have attorneys who show up in rainstorms with lease documents. My mother sat down slowly. Claire, she said, in a voice she had not used since I was 12. Explain. I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who had once told me I was not built for pressure. At the woman who had cried when Nathan got his first management role, but forgot to call me when I graduated top of my class. At the woman who had spent 6 years turning my silence into proof of failure. No, I said. Her mouth opened. No? I don't owe this room an explanation. Nathan laughed, but it came out wrong. Thin. Panicked. You absolutely do if your little company is involved with my employer. Your employer leases space in my building. That's the relationship. My company, not your company. His jaw tightened. Langford Group is preparing a major redevelopment proposal involving that property. I know. He blinked. You know? I received the proposal draft last week. That was not entirely true. I had received 3 versions. The official one, the aggressive one, and the internal one someone had accidentally attached to a folder they thought only Langford executives could access. In that internal draft, the tenant strategy was clear. Pressure the owner, undervalue the property, trigger maintenance disputes, force concessions, then acquire. It was not illegal, not exactly, but it was ugly, and Nathan's name appeared on the recommendation memo. My brother stared at me like he was seeing a locked door where a window had been. You're lying, he said. I tilted my head. About which part? His face tightened. That question scared him. My mother looked at Nathan. What is she talking about? Nothing, he snapped. Too fast. My father noticed. For once, my father noticed. Elliot stepped toward me and lowered his voice. We need to discuss this privately. That was when Nathan made his biggest mistake of the night. He reached for the envelope. Elliot caught his wrist before he touched it, not aggressively, just firmly. These are not your documents. Nathan pulled his hand back. You walk into my father's house and threaten me. I delivered documents to my client. Your client? My mother said softly. She looked at me with something close to betrayal. That almost made me angry, not because she felt betrayed, because she thought she had the right. You never asked what I did, I said. My mother blinked. What? For 6 years, you never asked. You assumed. That is not fair. No, I said. It isn't. The room went silent again. And there it was. The first honest sentence I had spoken to my family in years. It hung there between the candles and cake plates and expensive golf clubs. Then Melissa finally spoke. Her voice was careful. What exactly do you do, Claire? Nathan shot her a look. She ignored him. I looked at her and saw, for the first time, that she was afraid too. Not of me, of him. I buy distressed commercial assets, I said. Mostly properties other people underestimate. Aunt Karen whispered, "Commercial real estate?" I nodded. And logistics infrastructure, some equity positions, some advisory work. Mr. Henderson coughed. The same man who once told me women got too intense in finance was now staring at me like I had grown a second head. My mother shook her head slowly. "But you said you worked in support." "No."
Nathan said that. You repeated it. My father closed his eyes. That one hurt him. Good, it should have. Nathan pointed at me. You let us believe it. I let you believe what you wanted. That's manipulative. I almost smiled. Interesting word. His face hardened. What's that supposed to mean? It means be careful how loudly you accuse someone of manipulation when your signature is on a memo recommending pressure tactics against an owner you thought was vulnerable. The room went dead. Even the rain seemed quieter. Nathan's mouth opened, then closed. My mother turned to him. Nathan? He didn't answer. Melissa stood up slowly. What memo? He snapped. Sit down. And just like that, the room changed again, because everyone heard it. Not the words, the tone, the command. Melissa froze. Then she sat, but her face had gone blank. That blankness told me more than tears would have. My brother's life was not as perfect as my family believed either. They thought they knew him, too. They were wrong about that as well. Elliot looked at me. Claire, we should go. But I stayed seated, because something had shifted. For years, I thought the story was simple. They favored Nathan. They underestimated me. I built a life without them. That night, I started to understand the truth was uglier. Nathan had not only enjoyed being the golden child, he had used it. And my parents had given him cover for so long that he believed every room belonged to him, including mine. My father looked at Nathan with a face I had never seen before. Did you know? Nathan frowned. Know what? That Claire owned the building. No? But it was not clean. A clean lie moves fast. This one limped. My father heard it too. Did you know the owner was connected to this family? Nathan's eyes flicked toward me. Only for a second, but enough. My chest tightened. There it was, the hidden piece. He had known something, maybe not the full truth, but something. My mother stood again. This is getting ridiculous. It's your father's birthday. We are not doing this tonight. Of course, the family rule. When Nathan was exposed, the conversation became inappropriate. When I was humiliated, it was a joke. I stood. You're right. My mother looked relieved for half a second. Then I picked up the envelope. We're not doing this tonight. Nathan stepped toward me. Claire? I turned. His voice dropped low enough that only I was supposed to hear. Don't make this worse than it needs to be. I looked at him, and for the first time all night, I let him see that I was not afraid. You should have thought about that before you put my name in your files.
His face changed. Not much, but enough. He knew exactly what I meant. I walked out with Elliot beside me. Nobody stopped me. Not my mother, not my father, not Nathan. But as I reached the hallway, Melissa's voice followed me. "Claire!" I turned.
She stood near the dining room doorway, pale and stiff, one hand pressed against her stomach. Nathan said her name sharply. She ignored him again. Her eyes met mine. And then she said something that made every person in that house go silent. "I think I have something you need to see." Nathan moved before anyone else did. "Melissa, don't." She flinched, but this time she did not stop. She reached under the sleeve of her sweater and removed a small silver flash drive from her bracelet. My brother stared at it like it was a weapon. And maybe it was. Melissa held it out to me with shaking fingers. "He told me to delete everything," she whispered. "I didn't." I looked at the flash drive, then at Nathan, the golden child, the successful son, the man my parents had spent my entire life protecting. For the first time, he looked truly afraid. Not angry, not embarrassed, afraid. I took the flash drive from Melissa's hand. "What's on it?" I asked. Her eyes filled with tears. "Proof," she said. Then she looked past me at my parents. "Proof that Claire isn't the only person whose life you never really knew." The drive sat on my desk for almost 12 hours before I opened it. Not because I was afraid, because I knew that once I did, nothing would ever be the same. Some truths arrive like a storm. Others arrive like a key turning quietly inside a lock. This one felt like both. Outside my apartment, the city was beginning to wake. Inside, Elliot sat across from me with a cup of coffee. Neither of us had slept much. The flash drive rested between us. Small, ordinary, dangerous. "Ready?" he asked. "No." Then I plugged it in anyway. At first, it looked disappointing. Spreadsheets, emails, financial projections, meeting notes. Nothing dramatic, nothing explosive. Then I opened a folder called Internal. And everything changed. The first document carried Nathan's name, the second did too, then the third, and the fourth. By the time I reached the 10th file, my stomach felt cold. The redevelopment proposal wasn't the real story. The real story was how they planned to acquire properties, including mine. Nathan and several executives had been deliberately targeting owners they believed were financially weak. Owners who lacked legal resources. Owners they thought could be pressured into selling. They created disputes, delayed payments, manufactured complaints, used loopholes. Nothing criminal, just aggressive, predatory. And according to dozens of emails, Nathan had become one of the strategy's biggest supporters. But that wasn't what made me stop breathing. A video file did. I clicked it. A conference room appeared. Nathan sat at the table. Several executives surrounded him. Someone had recorded the meeting, probably accidentally. Or maybe not. A voice asked, "What happens if the owner refuses?" Nathan laughed. Actually laughed. Then he said, "Everybody breaks eventually." The room chuckled. Nathan continued,
especially people who need the money. Something about hearing him say it out loud made me feel sick. Because that sentence explained everything. Not just business, family, his entire life. Everybody breaks eventually. That was how he saw people. That was how he saw me. The forgotten daughter, the struggling sister, the family disappointment. The person he assumed would always stay smaller than him. He wasn't just wrong. He had built his entire worldview on being wrong. Then I found the final folder. And suddenly the story became much bigger. Inside were dozens of messages between Nathan and another executive. Messages discussing bonuses, private deals, undisclosed compensation, potential conflicts of interest. Nothing proven yet, but enough to raise serious questions, enough to destroy careers, enough to trigger investigations. Elliot looked at me. "What do you want to do?" I stared at the screen. For years I had imagined revenge. Not obsessively, just occasionally, the way people imagine conversations they never get to have. Moments where everyone finally realizes they were wrong. But now that I actually had the opportunity, it felt different. Less satisfying. More complicated. Because revenge is easy when people are monsters. Harder when they're human. Harder when they're family. 3 days later, Nathan called. 31 times. I never answered. Then Melissa called. I answered immediately. "He's panicking," she said. "I know. You've seen everything? Enough?" Silence. Then she sighed. "I didn't give you that drive to destroy him." I leaned back in my chair. "Then why did you?" "Because someone needed to know the truth." That stayed with me. The truth. Not revenge. The truth. A week later, Langford Group announced an internal review. Someone else had reported concerns, not me. Apparently, I wasn't the only person asking questions. Investigators arrived, auditors arrived, lawyers arrived. Nathan's confidence disappeared almost overnight. People who spend years feeling untouchable rarely know how to react when consequences finally appear. My mother called constantly. At first, she defended him. Then she explained him. Then she begged me to help him. The order was predictable. The desperation was not. One evening, she arrived at my apartment unannounced, the first time she had ever seen where I lived. I opened the door. She stepped inside, then stopped. Not because it was luxurious, because it wasn't. It was simply real. Everything she believed about me collapsed in less than 10 seconds. The office, the books, the city view, the framed awards, the life, my life. The one she had never bothered to ask about. She looked around slowly. Then she sat down. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, "Why didn't you tell us?" I laughed softly. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. "Tell you what?" "Any of this." I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman who had spent years believing she knew me. The woman who had never once asked a follow-up question. The woman who thought assumptions were the same thing as understanding. "You never wanted information," I said. "You wanted confirmation." She stared at me. You had already decided who I was. Tears filled her eyes. I was trying to understand you. No, I shook my head. You were trying to explain me. The difference finally landed. I could see it. The realization, the regret, the shame. Not dramatic, not instant, just real. And somehow that hurt more. Several weeks later, the investigation expanded. Nathan resigned before he could be terminated. Officially, it was voluntary. Everyone knew it wasn't. The promotion my family celebrated so proudly became the fastest fall anyone had ever seen. Some friends disappeared. Some colleagues disappeared. The people who loved his success most seemed strangely absent when it vanished. Funny how often that happens. The hardest conversation came with my father. He asked me to meet him for lunch, just the two of us. We sat across from each other in silence for several minutes. Then he placed something on the table. My grandfather's fountain pen. The birthday gift. I should have listened more, he said. I didn't answer, because there was nothing useful to say. He nodded slowly. I thought staying neutral made me a good father. There it was, the truth. Not cruelty. Cowardice. A different wound, but a wound all the same. I know, I said. His eyes filled. I missed so much. Yeah. That one word nearly broke him. Not because it was harsh, because it was honest. Months passed. Life settled. The investigations concluded. Nathan avoided prison, which was fair. He hadn't committed crimes. But his career was damaged. His reputation followed. And for the first time in his life, doors stopped opening automatically. Meanwhile, my business continued growing. Not because I had beaten him, not because I had won, because I had already been building it long before anyone noticed. That was the part people never understood. My success was never created by their failure. Their failure simply revealed it. Almost a year later, my family gathered again. Smaller this time. Quieter. Less performance. More honesty. Nathan came. So did Melissa. They were separated, not because of the investigation, because the investigation revealed who he really was. Those aren't always the same thing. Near the end of the evening, my mother approached me. She looked older, not dramatically, just tired. Can I ask you something? Sure. She hesitated, then said, When did everything change? I looked around the room, at my father, at Melissa, at Nathan sitting alone near the window, at the family that spent years believing they knew every detail of my life. Then I smiled. It didn't. She frowned. What do you mean? I picked up my glass. The truth is, I looked directly at her. You all thought I changed. I paused. But I was always this person. The room fell quiet. And for the first time, nobody argued. Because they finally understood. The biggest secret was never the company, or the buildings, or the money. The biggest secret was that they had spent years loving a version of me that only existed in their imagination. They thought they knew my life. They thought they knew my limits. They thought they knew my future. They thought they knew my worth. They were wrong about all of it. And by the time they realized the truth, I no longer needed their permission to become who I already was. The end.